The world's best-known cyber currency is having some trouble. The most recent shock to its value came late last week, coinciding with the revelation of how a large internet surveillance program and the U.S. National Security Agency is operating. And like any freely traded commodity, Bitcoin's price change reflects the sentiment of the market. One Bitcoin is now worth about 110 US dollars. Its peak in the past 30 days was $136 per Bitcoin. At its heart, Bitcoin's primary use is online, and therefore, the Bitcoin use outside of the traditional banking or money transfer system. Many economists say this Bitcoin virtual currency can't possibly succeed. But 4 years into Bitcoin's existence, more than 11.2 billion Bitcoins are in the marketplace. Mark New has the details.
American online dating site OkCupid is one of the latest companies to start accepting payments by what many consider a mysterious currency, Bitcoins.
It's been super successful so far. We started accepting Bitcoins mostly because, like I said, there's no real exchange risk for us. So if it's a flash in the pan tomorrow, we've still already collected all the money today, so who cares?
No one has confirmed who actually created the Bitcoin, which is why the anonymous creator has been given the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto. The currency's value is determined by supply and demand of the market, much like a stock. The value of a Bitcoin rose from essentially nothing all the way to a peak of $266 in April, then fell to $105 in a single day. But that hasn't scared investors away. Union Square Ventures, which has supported Tumblr and Zynga, recently invested $5 million into Coinbase, which helps hundreds of companies like OkCupid set up Bitcoin payment systems. The key advantage is that Bitcoins can be transferred without transaction charges, even internationally. Coinbase charges just 1% to convert Bitcoins immediately to cash.
Yes, it's scary because it's new, and there are new security concerns that need to be addressed with it, but that's sort of where I see Coinbase coming in. It's the sort of consumer-friendly front.
Anthropologist Timothy King teaches a social media class that covers Bitcoin. He points out that Bitcoins have been used for money laundering and drugs and weapons purchases.
They haven't become mainstream yet. But it's really clear when you have the nation of Cyprus using it as an informal currency, and it is clear that there's a few other nations that seem to be using it in Bitcoins, likely Greece, Spain. If I were to invest in a business, a Bitcoin infrastructure business that really has a good, solid business model and is going to allow someone like me to buy groceries with Bitcoins, I would put money in that.
Both King and Coinbase believe further regulation of Bitcoin is inevitable. Proponents say that would create more confidence, while opponents say it would hinder the free flow of money, proving there are indeed two sides to every Bitcoin. Mark New, CCTV, San Francisco.
One of the largest issues surrounding Bitcoin is how or if politicians and tax officials will be able to regulate it. Originally designed for online purchases, Jack Barton reports that Bitcoin is becoming increasingly popular for transactions.
Originally an experimental peer-to-peer online currency used by a small number of people, Bitcoins are now being used over the counter in the non-virtual world, like at this record store in Berlin.
Until now, I have had just a few sales with Bitcoins, although I think it will increase. I have already sold concert tickets with them.
Bitcoins are created on a network by servers known as Bitcoin miners. The idea is that Bitcoins will be created at their current pace until around 2017, after which virtual production will be halved until a maximum ceiling of 21 million have been created. To buy something in a shop, a customer only has to point their phone at the purchase code. Some investment firms are now pumping millions of dollars into Bitcoin-related services. No surprise then that supporters say Bitcoin's future looks bright.
If you think about concepts like information society or a globalized economy, they can only turn into reality with a money like Bitcoin and not with any of the known currencies.
But the limit on production means as more people use them, their value should logically rise, leading to hoarding rather than circulation. Though the alternative is to create a limitless supply, which would extinguish any intrinsic value.
Right now, Bitcoin is a nice, fashionable thing, but as long as it's not really linked to a standard like the gold standard, so as long as nothing is behind there, it won't work.
For now, Bitcoin is working. And what everyone from critic to enthusiast is keen to know is for how long. Jack Barton, CCTV, Berlin.
Joining us to talk more about this Bitcoin and its future is Alan Silbert. He's the founder and CEO of Bitpremier, which bills itself as a luxury marketplace for the digital currency. And we're also joined by Darrell Duffie, a professor at Stanford's Graduate School of Business. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on to the show. I'm not sure where to begin, but Darrell, let me start with you. Help us understand exactly what this Bitcoin is and how it compares to using a credit card or anything else that's virtual in the marketplace out there.
It's very much like a debit card. Electronic currencies have been around for a long time. This particular one is not connected to the bank payment system, so it has other attributes like anonymity for its users, which does cause some concerns. But it's really just one more electronic currency.
Is there a sense that, you know, in our package earlier in our program, we were talking about when it might go mainstream, and we talked to a lot of folks. Of course, these are technology folks, so they're generally going to understand this a lot better. But what does it take to get the average person to understand what this is and sort of take on the risk of saying, I'm going to start collecting the Bitcoins either as an investment or use it for transactions?
Well, I think both uses are possible. That is, it's a niche transaction service that's very convenient for certain small transaction services. As soon as it becomes big enough to contend as a serious currency, like the US dollar, long before that happens, regulators will stop in and put it back in its place as a niche product. It's also used, as you mentioned, for investment purposes, and that raises another regulatory concern. For example, in the United States, the Securities and Exchange Commission could begin to regulate it as a security if people start to use it as an investment product, because investors need to have disclosure.
I see just a lot of yellow flags everywhere. Let me get Alan in on the conversation. Alan, you run a business, luxury goods, facilitating transactions. You heard what Darrell said earlier. I mean, it's fun, it's interesting, it's cute, but how do we get it from that to mainstream? Tell us about how you're using it for your business.
Yeah, well, beginning of this year, I started researching Bitcoins, and I became really enamored with it and its potential uses for really frictionless global commerce, which is really what I think its biggest appeal is. And so we were looking for a space that there was a void, and we found one in luxury goods. There's nothing else out there like Bitpremier, and so we wanted to fill the void and give the Bitcoin community a new universe of items.
All right, maybe dumb it down for us a little bit more. I've got the Bitcoins, I've got my credit card. I'm coming to you with it. What are you doing with that?
Well, you know, first you would be assuming that you exchanged a local currency like US dollars or yen.
I take the Bitcoin and exchange it for US dollars.
Right, at an exchange like Mt. Gox, or there's other exchanges.
An online exchange.
Yes, and you would transfer them to me to my Bitcoin address.
I send you the US dollars.
You trade your US dollars for Bitcoins at the exchange.
Okay.
Now you have Bitcoins in your wallet. And so you could send Bitcoins to my Bitcoin address using your private key, which only you have possession of.
Okay. Let's say I've sent it to you, the Bitcoins.
And yeah, you send me the Bitcoins. It's almost instantaneous that it goes across the Bitcoin network. And so it goes from wallet to wallet, and now I have possession of them. And that's a...
So you've got my money now. That's it?
It's an irreversible transaction. And the transaction is populated amongst the Bitcoin network, which is open source and for anybody to see.
But it sounds like I'm just giving you money.
It's very much like money, but in its electronic form and in open source and universal.
Okay. Let me, Darrell, this is a fascinating topic. I'm trying to get my head around the details of it as well. Maybe you can help us out here. You mentioned the risks earlier of the regulatories. Is this a currency, or is this a way to facilitate transactions? Because I still don't know the difference, other than the fact that I guess the price of it could go up or down against the US dollar, aside from me giving my credit card to Elaine and having her spend it at a .com site.
It's like any other currency, except that it's not regulated by any country or central bank.
Okay, and is that the concern, that there will be regulation down the road?
Well, I think if it gets big enough, it will begin to be regulated, yes. There are already signs of some regulation. Registration requirements for these exchanges that your other guest mentioned.
But
after it gets big enough, it'll get more regulation.
Professor, can I ask you just a real honest question about if I was in your class and I wanted to start up a business in Bitcoin, I say, hey, I've got this wonderful idea, should I do it? What would you tell me?
There are Silicon Valley investors.
Okay, we have some technical difficulties there. Darrell, I want to thank you very much, professor at Stanford's Graduate School of Business. Also, Alan Silbert, a fascinating, interesting, and a little complicated sort of technology that we're talking about. Best of luck. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.